Hello brothers, sisters and friends. Thank you for joining me here on this video. This is my review of the 2020 Jehovah's Witnesses Convention. So this is the fourth video in my series. The first two videos were of the Friday morning, part 1 and 2. Then my third video was Friday afternoon, part 1. So this video is now Friday afternoon, part 2. So to watch my reviews and my opinions and perspective on the Friday morning and first part of the afternoon session, then I will drop a link to those videos in the description box below, so please feel free to check it out. Okay, so I'm going to get straight into this video and let you know my thoughts.
We see clearly in the Bible that Jehovah invites us to look closely at the things he has made so that we can learn from them. And doing so is a delightful experience. So let's do that together. In this symposium, we will examine 6 of Jehovah's many works and our God-given ability to enjoy them all. First, we'll focus our attention on exquisite flowers. Then, our next speaker will talk about one of our favorite things, delicious food. Next, we will discuss beautiful colors, our well-designed bodies, delightful sounds, and lastly, fascinating animals. Each talk in this series will also teach us scriptural lessons from creation that can help us rejoice in life even now in these difficult last days.
So they start off telling us that we're going to have this symposium. It's 6 parts and they're going to be covering a number of subjects such as animals, flowers, food, etc. And I'm kind of thinking that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world and in some underdeveloped countries would be taking time off work where they would have the opportunity to earn money to support their families. For some of those people, it may be unpaid work, and also there might be other things to consider, such as families trying to arrange childcare or taking their child out of school to be able to participate in this convention. Elderly people, having lots of things to consider, people with health challenges. So, there's lots of people taking time out and altering their arrangements to be able to listen to this convention. And as a supposedly Christian organisation, one who professes to be God's channel of communication, I would have thought that the programme would be sharing some really deep doctrinal spiritual insight to make it worthwhile for people to attend. But no, we're going to be talking about flowers, food, animals, things like that. But also, I just want to comment on the manner and the tone in which these men are speaking to people. And it's very much in almost like they're talking to, a 6-year-old child. Because when people are talking to young children, they tend to soften and animate their voice a little bit, and also talk in a very basic manner. And that's how he's talking to people, him and the following speakers. So, I know when I was going along to the meetings, I reckon that the average Jehovah's Witness was about 40 years old, give or take. But yet they're speaking down to people like they're, like their children. But then that's by design, because we know that children are very easily influenced, and they indoctrinate their people to the point that they are so indoctrinated. I can just imagine people sitting there nodding like the Churchill dog. Over here in the UK, we have an advert on TV where there's a dog and he's nodding like that, just keeps nodding. So, that's a standing joke about the Churchill dog. So they're sitting there like the Churchill dog, sitting there nodding and literally soaking up everything that these speakers are saying, and not even for a moment thinking about stepping outside of what they're being told, to think about things for themselves, or even exploring things for themselves.
At one point in life, the faithful man Job was reminded by his friend Elihu to stop and consider carefully the wonderful works of God. Do you recall how that advice helped Job? As Job learned, our joy increases when we're focused on Jehovah and on his works instead of on ourselves.
So it's interesting that he's saying here that people's joy is going to come when they focus on doing God's work, or in other words, the work that the governing body wants you to do, rather than focusing on yourself. And I just find that absolutely crazy. That is crazy, 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 absolute nonsense. You have to focus on yourself first and foremost, because if you don't look after yourself, you're in no position to look after anybody else. So, I do find that when I was Jehovah's Witness, I was burnt out, totally burnt out, along with lots of other pioneers, but also elders and ministerial servants in the congregation and in the area, completely burnt out, because they're trying to provide for their families, doing menial jobs, earning little money, not having the money that they need to eat properly, to provide them for themselves. So their self-care is lacking, so that they can do what the governing body tells them to do and to volunteer their time. So it's an absolute manipulative, divisive statement that he's making.
Parents and young ones, this is a good lesson for all of us. Following the advice given to Job can also draw us closer to Jehovah. How much better that is than spending time with much of the world's entertainment that is debased. Such prepackaged entertainment is often designed to turn us away from Jehovah, not draw us closer to him. But what about spending time observing Jehovah's works? Now that's a wholesome pastime with a future.
So Jehovah's Witnesses, the governing body, does nothing, say nothing, puts together a talk, unless they have a devious and subtle purpose to it. And here he's telling you what it is. They want to be in control of what you listen to. They don't want you listening to the world's entertainment that he classes as debased, but rather they want you to focus on what they want you to focus on, which is plants, flowers, creation.
Observing flowers may also bring to our mind another lesson, one that Jesus taught. Please open your Bible again to Matthew chapter 6, and we'll read together verses 28 to 30. In the reading, look for the answer to the following question: how can flowers help us when we get anxious? Let's read Matthew chapter 6, verses 28 to 30. Jesus said, "Also, why are you anxious about clothing? Take a lesson from the lilies of the field, how they grow. They do not toil, nor do they spin. But I tell you that not even Solomon in all his glory was arrayed as one of these. Now if this is how God clothes the vegetation of the field that is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will he not much rather clothe you, you with little faith?" How heartwarming. Have you ever been anxious about food and clothing? If so, you're not alone. Among those listening to Jesus on this occasion were many poor people who had the same natural concerns.
Now, this is interesting because in my review, which is part 1 and 2, I talked about how the organisation wants to keep people poor by not encouraging them to get promotions, to take jobs that's going to give them more opportunity, because of fear that it might take them away from serving Jehovah or doing the preaching work. And I drew the comparison to those living in the West to those living in underdeveloped countries. So it's interesting that he talks about this here. And it's almost like saying, do you know what? Don't worry about being poor. Don't be anxious if you haven't got enough food or you haven't got enough clothes. You know, expect that. Expect to live like that. Because you know what? God's going to look after you. Now, there are so many, and it breaks my heart because there are so many Jehovah's Witnesses who really take this to heart, and they are living in poverty. And I don't just mean in underdeveloped countries, I mean also right here in the UK, in Europe, in America, in Canada, in developed countries. There are so many Jehovah's Witnesses living in poverty because they take to heart these messages that God's going to provide for them, He's going to feed them, He's going to clothe them. And therefore they don't need to worry about that. So they focus on these menial jobs. Some even give up their jobs to work voluntary as a pioneer, in the hopes that there's going to be a reward. And the saddest thing of all is that some congregations, certainly in the one that I grew up with and was a pioneer in, they do not look after their people. There was no support system for the pioneers who were dedicating hours and hours and hours each month and working part-time menial jobs. There was just no support. So yeah, there was a culture of poverty amongst many of the pioneers, elders, ministerial servants who are doing more in the organization.
And like Jehovah, when we give generously to others and help care for their needs when it's within the power of our hand to do so, we too will experience the joy that comes from giving.
So this statement is really devious. It's really devious and cunning, because Jehovah's Witnesses are well known to give and donate their time and money to the organisation. However, they're not renowned for donating their time, money, energies, efforts, knowledge, anything like that outside of the organisation, unless it's for their secular work. But Jehovah's Witnesses don't get involved in charity work. They don't get involved in relief efforts. They don't get involved in community activities unless the governing body says so, which is very few and far between. And that's only really around relief efforts if, say, like one of their kingdom halls are damaged and needs repairing. But you know, they don't get involved in anything else. So they don't give generously. They don't give of their time and their resources.
What can we do to make the study of God's Word more enjoyable? When reading the Bible, do so aloud in a lively manner.
So here we have it. People are even being told how to read their Bibles. Ultimate control they want. They want control over the way you think, and now the way that you even read your own Bible.
Due to human rulership, many today do not receive adequate amounts of physical food. But the day is near when our loving Creator will see to it that everyone alive will have an abundance of food and drink.
You know, there's a lot of research that has been done by so-called worldly people, quote unquote, to say and to demonstrate that there is plenty of food for everyone on this earth. There's absolutely loads. People in the West particularly we have food mountains where food is being thrown away. Too much food is being produced, where in other countries there's not enough food being produced. So globally across the world there is plenty of food. The problem is the distribution of that food. That's the problem. And interestingly, I note that Jehovah's Witnesses and the governing body do not get involved. They make no efforts whatsoever to get involved in the distribution of the physical food for people to eat. It's okay for him to stand there and talk about God's kingdom this, God's kingdom that, and thinking about in the future. What about now? People need food now. And there's lots and lots of organisations, including religious organisations, that get involved in helping with the distribution of food and clean water, medical supplies, and lots of provisions to people around the world, whether it be in a time of disaster or just on an everyday basis. Lots of organisations get involved in that. Jehovah's Witnesses and the governing body and the Watchtower is probably one of the wealthiest religious organisations there is. And yet, I mean, if you think about it, they have hundreds and thousands of people working for them on a voluntary basis in their head offices, in their Bethels all over the world, doing lots of different roles. Not one of them is paid. They're all voluntary. So this organisation has a huge amount of money that's been donated to them by its members, but also from their business, their publishing company, their printing company, and also their property business. They've got a massive property portfolio. This organisation is talk about storing up treasures in heaven. This organisation has billions, and they have the resources, if they choose, to help with the distribution of physical food across the world. They don't do that. So it's just mind-blowing. I'd love to see Jehovah's Witnesses as an organisation get involved in some community efforts, making donations to some countries who are in need, you know, financially, in terms of charity work. I'd love to see the governing body set up soup kitchens and get involved in feeding the homeless, feeding the hungry, setting up charities to house the homeless, and to tend to the sick. I'd love to see that, but oh no, all of that is about this imaginary future in the new world order.
Hi guys, ever so sorry my camera for some strange reason isn't working, so I'm going to continue reviewing the convention via audio, so please bear with me.
1 Corinthians 15:58, it says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always having plenty to do in the work of the Lord, knowing that your labor is not in vain in connection with the Lord." So what do we need to do? Move, stay busy, have plenty to do in the work of the Lord. And Jehovah gave us further reason for rejoicing by giving us meaningful work to do. Now, many of you, dear brothers and sisters, have said that you've never felt busier than you do now.
Ain't that the truth? They really are keeping their followers busy, and it's by design. I know when I was a Jehovah's Witness and I was pioneering, I was so busy, there was no time to think for myself, no time to do my own independent research, no time for anything. I was, myself and others are just kept in a little bubble, and we're just like those little hamsters on that hamster wheel going round and round and round, and you're just so busy with prepping for field service, for Bible studies that you're conducting, for meetings, and back then there was 5 meetings a week. I know it's changed now. And then personal study, it was relentless. It was just so constant, and that is by design. It's designed that way so that you don't have the mental space or the physical time to really stop and think about what you're learning, what you're being taught. Because if you did, if you had that free time, people would be able to go out and do their own independent research, speak to people, and realize that actually what they're being taught is not correct. So yeah, it is by design that they're keeping people so busy.
Block out the harmful noise around us. We can put on noise cancelling headphones. In other words, we refuse to listen to anything that can distance us from Jehovah. Like what? Deceptive reasoning and false accusations, for example, are very dangerous. They undermine our trust in Jehovah's organization. Some who were once part of the Christian congregation now attempt to mislead us. They spread half-truths and outright lies about Jehovah's organization.
Now, it's really interesting the way that they have slipped this point into the talk, into the symposium, because they have, throughout the symposium, all the speakers have spoken down to the listener, talking to them almost in a very childlike manner, and in a childlike way. And I can just imagine the audience sitting there, soaking it all up, and nodding their heads and going along and thinking, oh, what a wonderful provision. So like children, very much so, just soaking things up, listening intently. And now that they've got their full attention after talking about colours and food and smell and all the different senses, they now are using the sense of listening to really drum home their point about not listening to essentially what they're saying is apostates, people who were once Jehovah's Witnesses and have now left because they are awake, wide awake, or awakening, and trying to help those who are still inside the organisation, trying to help them to wake up too. So people like myself and other people on YouTube and Reddit and Twitter and Instagram and all the social media platforms who are trying to raise awareness and help people wake up. The organisation is warning about warning against listening to people like us. So I just find that how divisive these leaders are, these speakers are, really divisive, and almost working people up into a situation, getting them, manipulating them, coercing them, getting them into a situation where they're almost like mentally receptive to everything that is being said. Because up until this point, most things that have been said is just fairly standard. It's non-controversial. I mean, there's a couple of points that I've picked up because I am awake, but being a Jehovah's Witness who's not awake, they're probably just lapping it all up. So up until this point, it's all non-confrontational. Is nothing too exciting going on for the average Jehovah's Witness. But they've got them, they've already got them, they got them where they want them, they've got them sitting in their seat, glued in their seats, looking at the videos, thinking that this is all great, it's all wonderful. Their minds are receptive, their hearts are receptive. So now they're coming with their punchline is block out the noise from JWs and anybody that is speaking against the organisation. And you know, when I used to go to these assemblies, after every single assembly there would be ex-JWs, apostates, protesters outside the assembly hall, both at these large conventions and at the smaller ones, and the warning was always don't speak to them, don't even look at them. And as a young child growing up, and then as a teenager and a young adult, I was so fearful of them. I was so fearful. And they would often be there with their placards, and they weren't causing any trouble. They just wanted to express themselves and how they felt. But the organisation and the speakers at the assembly put such fear into myself and others that there was just no way we were going to ever entertain them, listen to them, take any material off them, nothing like that. And I could see now that I'm sort of awake watching this this symposium and this convention and seeing their manipulation, I could see clearly now how myself and millions of people have been deviously manipulated. It's just quite shocking to see just how devious, manipulative, and downright evil, quite frankly, these men are, this governing body are, and cunning the way that they've sort of slipped these points right in the middle of a talk where they know that they've got people, their hearts and minds.
Harmful sounds might also come from non-Christian workmates, schoolmates, or contacts on social media. They do not share our beliefs, so conversations with them are rarely faith-strengthening. They might weaken our faith, making our Christian life course more difficult. Therefore, we need to protect our ears from damaging noise by not listening to it.
It's so interesting that now he's turning his attention to warning against listening to work colleagues or school friends or, funnily enough, people on social media. Interesting that. But what I find particularly interesting is his body language. He's leaned in, he's curled over just a tiny bit, and he's changed his tone of voice even more so, just as if he's talking to a young child. And then we've got the little finger wave. So in his mind, he is clearly presenting this talk to children, bearing in mind that the average Jehovah's Witness is probably around the age of 40. So all the speakers, the preceding speakers as well, that is their general tone, but he's using the opportunity to treat the audience just like children, because he knows that at this point he's got them and they are just literally lapping up everything that he's saying without question.
That second peace destroyer, contentiousness. What does that mean? Being disagreeable, argumentative, competitive, terrible quality. It's the product of pride and selfish ambition. And as we read earlier, in James 3:14 and 15, it's certainly not part of that wisdom that comes down from above, but rather it is earthly, characteristic of earthly humans who are alienated from God. It is animalistic, characteristic of animals who lack spirituality and are often contentious with each other. It is even demonic, characteristic of the wicked spirits who are very proud and ambitious. But genuine peacemakers work very hard to avoid these two peace disturbers, jealousy and contentiousness. They neither flaunt their talents, nor do they feel threatened if others are more skilled preachers, teachers, organizers, or shepherds. They're very happy to be considered a lesser one, as Jesus encouraged at Luke 9:48.
So in this part of the symposium, we've now got Stephen Lett doing a talk about peacemakers and really setting out the qualities that they want their followers to have and to develop. And it's really interesting how he's likening some qualities that the organisation don't want to see, such as people being argumentative and having pride. He's looking, and even being competitive, he's looking at these qualities as wrong. He's saying that they're alien, these qualities are alien from God, people who have pride and selfish ambitions. He's saying that these qualities are even animalistic and demonic. And I just find it really interesting the way that he's demonizing qualities that in many aspects of life are actually a good thing. We teach young people and children to have pride, to be proud of themselves. And yet he's putting this quality down as a negative thing. In lots of careers, and to get ahead in life, you do have to be competitive. You have to have drive and ambition to be able to have the things that you want in life. But again, no, he's describing these things as animalistic and demonic. So he's really demonizing lots of qualities that everyday non-Jehovah's Witnesses would consider within measure to be good qualities to help them get on in life, to have a standard of living where they're comfortable, to have a job and a career that of their choosing. But all of these qualities he's demonizing, and again, this is about, they want to keep people in their place. They want to keep people away from having ambitions for themselves, and even to the point where he's saying that people need to basically know your place and know that you're a lesser one. Yeah, that there's no equality. You are lesser than some of us, i.e., those at the top of the organisation who might have better teaching skills, preaching skills, all of that. Remember your place. You are lesser than us, and you need to be satisfied and accept that. Don't be argumentative, any of these things, because remember, it's animalistic and demonic. So, yeah, very warped and twisted approach.
But now, how does a peacemaker reach out to qualify for privileges of service? Well, he just works hard to develop Christian qualities within himself. And he just works hard in behalf of kingdom interest. And when a peacemaker does receive a privilege of service, he credits receiving it to Jehovah and not as a personal achievement.
So, in order for any Jehovah's Witnesses to get a promotion, which is really what it is, but they prefer to disguise it as a privilege, they're saying that they need to work really hard. So this working hard is about acknowledging that they are lesser, that there is no equality in the organisation, and to put the kingdom interests first, even if it means shirking family responsibilities, as we saw in the dramatisation on the morning, which I covered in part 3. And also, even if it means living in poverty and going without, as we saw again on the Friday morning dramatisation. So, yes, in order to get privileges or promotion, then people are expected to work hard for the organisation to the detriment of everything else. And when they do work hard, they're to take no gratification and no pleasure in having accomplished anything, because it all needs to be recognised as something that Jehovah has bestowed upon them. So again, really putting people in their place, letting people know how they should feel, what they should think when it comes to reaching out, and accepting no acknowledgement for all their hard work. Little bit warped in my view.
But now, let's talk about some things we can do personally to promote peace and joy. Number 1, cultivate humility and modesty. Humility means to consider others superior to ourselves. Modesty means to be aware of our own limitations. Now, if we have those two closely related qualities, we'll be able to apply Romans chapter 12, verse 3, which says we should not think more of ourselves than it is necessary to think, but to think so as to have a sound mind.
So he's really getting to the point here. So he's saying that in order to have a sound mind, or to be considered as being sound of mind, followers need to remember their place. Always remember you're a lesser one. Remember your own limitations. Again, supporting that you are lesser and you might not be as good as preaching or teaching or some of these other skills, but that's okay. Remember, you're being modest when you recognise your own limitations. And also you need to remember your place, in that you are lesser than the superior ones, which incidentally is the hierarchy that exists within the organisation, such as the elders, the circuit overseers, and ultimately the governing body.
Now, here's a second thing we can do to promote joy and peace. Appreciate and value the good qualities and talents of others. Focus on their good points, not their flaws. And how thankful we can be that Jehovah does that with us. Otherwise, we'd be doomed, wouldn't we? But maybe you heard the illustration of a brother holding up a white piece of paper with a red spot in the middle and asking an audience what they see. Well, most say they see a red spot. But then he points out that actually 99% of what they're looking at is white paper. But we tend to notice the spot. Well, if we're not careful, that's what we can do with our brothers. Notice that flaw rather than all the good qualities. But may all of us cultivate the Jehovah-like quality of noticing, appreciating, and valuing the good qualities of our brothers.
So here he's really getting further into his point, encouraging followers to focus on people's good qualities rather than their faults. And this can work on so many different levels. So, for example, it could work with somebody who, as we saw in the dramatisation in the third video that I reviewed, and I will drop a link in the description box below, it could be that the husband is shirking his responsibilities at home of being a father, the head of the house, etc. And the wife has been encouraged to ignore that, forget that he's, sat at home all day and he's not supporting the running of the household. But yet she was encouraged to focus in on his positive and his good qualities. So it can work on that level. It could also be on the level that there is a child abuser in the congregation, and because he's repented of his sins and he's now been welcomed back, instead of focusing on the flaw and the sin that he committed, the congregation will be encouraged to focus on his good qualities rather than the fact that he's a wrongdoer. So yeah, again, it supports that culture of harbouring and shielding wrongdoers. It could also be on a level where he's saying that, yes, as an organisation, we've made wrong decisions, we've issued false prophecies, and our literature is completely... and our literature has some really bad statements in it from our earlier days right up to our present days. It could also be that he's saying, you know what, don't look at that. Don't look at our flaws. Don't look at where we've gone wrong. Don't look at the fact that, we've made these false prophecies, these false predictions, given, wrong teachings. Don't focus on all of that, but just focus on all the good that we do, all the positives. So yeah, he's really trying to get into the mind of people to ignore and sweep under the carpet issues that for some are staring them right in the face. So he's saying, remember your place. You're a lesser one. Listen to us, the superior ones in the organisation, and you must be modest with it, and you must be content with your lot in life, and you mustn't show any animalistic and demonic qualities of pride and competitiveness, but you must just sit back, know your place, and ignore our flaws and the flaws of the brothers. So, and again, I could see people sitting there nodding, going along and thinking, yeah, maybe I have been a bit judgmental. Maybe I am displaying demonic, animalistic qualities, and I need to know my place and see things and just ignore it, because at the end of the day, Jehovah's going to deal with it. And that certainly is the culture amongst the rank and file of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Never presume that fellow Christians are trying to outdo us. 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, love believes, love hopes all things. So we believe, we hope that our brothers are doing what they're doing out of a good motive, to please Jehovah, not to outdo us. And we remember, Jehovah's appointed only one judge, Jesus. We are no judge. We have no right to negatively judge our brothers' motives.
So this is a joke. Surely it's a joke, because everything about the Jehovah's Witness culture is about judgment and judging others. They start right from judging non-believers. They're very judgmental and critical about non-believers and other religions and other belief systems. And within their own system, within their own organisation, everything is about judging others. Hence why they have this judicial system set up to judge people that they believe are wrongdoers. That's all about judgment. Whether people get a promotion or what they disguise that and call it a privilege, either as a pioneer or ministerial servant, elder, or further up the rank. That's all about judging people and their qualities, and whether somebody thinks that they are deserving of that position. Everything about them is about judgment. So for him to say, don't judge, it's a bit of a joke. What he's really saying is, don't judge us. Don't judge us as the leaders, the superior ones in the organisation. Yeah, don't judge us, and don't promote that culture of judging what we teach, what we put out there. You must just accept that without any judgments. And that's really what I believe is what he's getting at behind that. It's like, you mustn't judge, the rank and file mustn't judge each other or those further up the hierarchy. Don't do that. Leave that to Jehovah. But them at the top and in positions, oh yeah, they are judge, jury, and executioner.
So may each of us prayerfully work to have the attitude of wanting to be a peacemaker. So the new world will be a very peaceful place. But if we're a peace promoter now, we will convince Jehovah that we will be an asset toward that peace of his new world. But right now, we have to work at it, don't we? We have to seek peace, pursue it. But if we're a peace pursuer now, we will convince Jehovah that we will be a peace displayer in his righteous new world, and he'll want us to be there. So let's diligently promote peace and contribute toward the strength, the happiness of Jehovah's beautiful organization, which really is a modern-day miracle, remembering that those who promote peace have joy, and they impart joy to others, and they make Jehovah's heart rejoice. And all of that rejoicing will last forever.
So the thrust behind this talk is really encouraging the rank and file to know their place and to shut up and put up, basically, because he's holding that carrot. If you want to be a peace, if you want to be in the new world order, I'm not sure if he's talking about the Illuminatis, but if he's talking about being in the new world, then you need to be a peacemaker, and you need to know your place, recognise the superior people in the organisation, recognise that actually you might not have the talents or the skills, So you need to be modest and don't speak out because that's animalistic and demonic. So you need to just shut up and put up, know your place, and be peaceful in doing so. And just sweep things under the carpet. If you see things you don't like, don't judge. Just sweep it under the carpet, leave it to Jehovah. And this really is promoting a very passive way of life, and Jehovah's Witnesses are extremely passive in their approach to life. I know when I was in the organisation, and if I saw things, I'm quite an outspoken person, and if I saw things, I was always told, leave it alone, don't get involved, leave it alone, Jehovah will deal with it. And yeah, that is very much how they deal with things. But as I grew up and matured, I realised that actually it's only by speaking out that things get done, that change happens. And we look at the wider world and we see it's only because people get together in either a peaceful or non-peaceful way, but people get together and they speak out, that we have change, that there's now racial equality, that certainly here in the UK, we have unions that protect employers' rights, we have safe working conditions, we have better housing, we have food that isn't as polluted as it used to be. There's just so many different things that the people have impacted and brought about change because they spoke up. And if in the Jehovah's Witness organisation they encouraged people to speak up and to speak out, even if it's in a peaceful way, but if they encourage people to do that rather than be passive, then I'm sure it would be a totally different place. Children and parents would be able to be at peace without knowing that they're sitting in the same room as a paedophile, as a child abuser. They would have their lives saved because they would be speaking up against their blood policy. They would be speaking up against the amount of hours that they are required to do out in field service. They'd be speaking out about the requirements of dedicating so much time to kingdom interest and all of this. Things could be a very, very different place if people were allowed to speak up. But no, the culture is, no, just sweep it under the carpet. If you've got any concerns, any doubts, leave it to Jehovah. But trust in these superior ones in the organisation. So yeah, it's a very, very warped culture, a culture that really doesn't encourage people to speak out and to share their real views. I mean, people could quite easily speak out, even in a peaceful way, about. He also talks about this point about convincing Jehovah, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, but I didn't think that there was a need to convince Jehovah, because that was why Jesus came and died. So, I mean, it might be that they want the followers to convince Jehovah, who lives in New York in Watchtower. There might be, need to convince him, but the God of the universe, the divine, the almighty, I'm not so sure that there's any need to convince him of anything, because he knows our heart.
For us to really capture how we can have a close friendship with Jehovah, we need to learn to think and feel like Jesus did and still does. So when we imitate his example, it increases our joy. So in this talk, we're going to discuss two aspects of Jesus' mental disposition. The first aspect is how Jesus showed unselfish love, and that drew him close to his Father. He found absolute joy in showing neighbor love and doing good to others.
So in this talk, Anthony Morris is using Jesus as an example to show that Jehovah's Witnesses, their followers, need to show neighbourly love. And I just find that his words of hypocrisy is just quite outstanding, really, because Jehovah's Witnesses, they are encouraged to show love towards people, but only on a superficial level. So they will give their time to show love, to go out in the ministry and preaching and talking, but when it comes to showing love to their neighbour in the widest respect, helping out with charity, fundraising, getting involved in community events, things like that, no, that is not something they're prepared to get involved with. So quite hypocritical, really.
Now notice this artwork here, please.
Jesus gave from his heart, unselfishly. Imagine Jesus' feelings when he met someone who needed help.
So Anthony Morris has invited the audience to pay attention and watch this video artwork presentation, and I've watched it with interest and with fresh, new, opened eyes, thanks to the amazing and fantastic work that Elaine does over on her channel of JW Escape. And on Elaine's channel, she has explored a lot of the artwork over the years from the Jehovah's Witness publications and all the symbolic and hidden and occultic messages in the artwork. So thanks to her, my eyes have been opened and I've looked at this artwork in a completely fresh light, and this is what I've noticed. Let me know down in the comment section what you think, what you see, and if you see anything else or anything different.
You see Jesus in the joy of helping others. It's just very evident, and the closeness with his Father, they could see it. The disciples rejoiced. What a perfect example of being close to Jehovah, and the result, joy. See? So that's what we want to keep in mind, and Jesus set that example for us.
Yes, again, more hypocrisy, because Jesus actually went out into the community and he helped people in need. Jehovah's Witnesses, their policies do not encourage their members to go out into the community and help people in need. They leave that to the authorities. They don't get involved in that. They don't get involved in volunteering their time their resources, their money in anything that is not involving other Jehovah's Witnesses, their kingdom halls, or that's going to benefit the organisation. So I just find his hypocrisy quite outstanding. Also, where is the love in the organisation for its own members? The policies that they adopt and have in place really is anything but love, with the policy around blood transfusion, child abuse, or the lack of policy around child abuse, I should say, and things like shunning, disfellowshipping, marking people. All of those are not based on love. Those are not examples of love. So, yeah, I'm not quite sure what example he wants people to follow, because if it's Jesus' example that they need to follow, they really need to take a close look at themselves.
He also, you'll notice in verse 37, stated, stop judging. Just stop it. He didn't say don't judge. He said stop judging. Why? Because that's imperfect human inclination to judge others. Sometimes, even in the congregation, some can become overly critical. They can become resentful, envious. See? And envy is so destructive. Somebody might have materialistic prosperity. They might enjoy privileges that you don't have in the congregation. Others might find them very endearing, and so envy can creep in. And frankly, it's unhealthy physically and spiritually. A busybody, literally overseer in what is another's. What does that tell you? Well, if it's not your responsibility to oversee this particular issue, then you could keep in mind the need, mind your own business.
Isn't it interesting the way that Tony Morris says, in a matter-of-fact way, again, is telling his audience off, speaking down to them and warning them in this very paternal, dictatorial manner. He's telling them to stop judging. And the reason he's doing that is because there's only one judge in that organisation, and that's the governing body. And they want to reserve that role of judging others for themselves. So it's interesting that he's warning against judging when all that the organisation does is judge other people. He also talks about being a busybody, and again, that is all that the organisation does, and is they meddle in people's lives, in every aspect of people's lives, from what they wear, what they think, what work they should do, how many hours work they should do, whether they take promotion, what they read, what they watch, their education levels, going to college, etc., who they talk to, who they hang out with, who they have as friends, their relationships, their marriages, their sex life, whether their medical care. There's just every aspect of a person's life they want to get involved. So they are the ultimate busybody. So he's coming with some really rich hypocritical statements, and I think that Anthony Morris and his colleagues need to look at themselves first, take a really deep, close look before they start setting out rules for other people.
Now, notice here in this artwork how Jesus is showing his disciples and how much joy they have applying that counsel about keeping it simple.
Jesus knew that storing up treasures in heaven brings joy. Imagine the joy Jesus found in sharing life's simple pleasures with others.
So we're being asked again to look at the artwork presentation. So having done that twice, I am just seeing some very, very strange images. So I've pointed them out. So I'd be interested for you to drop your comments below and let me know what you think. Do you see the same things that I'm seeing? Or maybe you're seeing something different? I have to say that having looked at the artwork, both sets of artwork in Anthony Morris's presentation, following his request, I have to say I feel very unnerved at what I'm seeing. And when I was Jehovah's Witness, I used to look as a child at the images in the books and the magazines. And, I find it interesting that growing up and for many years, they used artwork and not as many photographs. They use photographs today, but not as much back then. And it's interesting because in artwork, you have control over what you get your viewers to see, and you could place things in artwork. It's not as easy with photographs. So I'm interested to know why they are specifically asking people to look and consider the artwork. They could have quite easily have recreated the scenes with actors and done a video presentation with live actors or with photographs, but no, they're asking us to consider the artwork over which somebody or a team of people have control over what you see and the images that they place in that artwork. And I was just really unnerved because I've never really noticed it before. I often thought that some of the images weren't right and there was something strange about the images when I was growing up and when I was Jehovah's Witness. But after time, I just became blinded to looking at the finer detail. You just look at the overall presentation and the overall picture. But again, and I have to give a shout out to Elaine over at JW Escape and the work that she's done on her channel. Incredible work that she's done to open my eyes, and I'm sure the eyes of so many other people, in regards to all the subliminal messages hidden in artwork. So when I looked at this upon Anthony Morris's request, I was just seeing some things that, and I will be honest, they scared me. It absolutely scared me. And even now, as I'm recording this in the daytime, I feel very unnerved and very unsettled. And that's because for years I grew up trusting this organisation, and now I'm seeing that there's a lot of subliminal and occultic messages in those images, in the artwork images. And this just again adds to my feelings and my case that I have been very deeply spiritually abused by this organisation, like so many other people. So yeah, I feel very unnerved and very unsettled at the images that I'm seeing within this artwork. But maybe it's just me. Maybe, I'm seeing things that are not there. So I would be interested to know your thoughts on what you see, if you see anything at all. Okay guys, so this brings me to the end of the review for this particular section of the convention. If you've missed my other reviews, part 1, 2 and 3, I will drop a link in the description box below. If you've not done so already, please hit that red subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified as and when I upload videos in the future. And also, if you enjoy my work and you want to support me, then please feel free to buy me a coffee, and I've put the link in the description box below. Okay guys, I will look forward to seeing you on another video. Take care now.